don't realize they can dream big.
You didn't know what was possible for you because you kind of always paid attention to the statistics and, and growing up in the inner city, the numbers are always stacked up against you. So you didn't really know what was possible. In the fourth grade, I missed 80 days of school.
The school currently has 240 third and fourth graders and will add grade levels each academic year. By 2022, it's expected to have students from first through eighth grades. I Promise will also provide children with a path to college and support services for them and their parents. With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr.
If you want to really know what's going on, get close to the source.
Admiral, how do you come to a decision where you can have the most impact?
Tom Keene.
Is that feasible to have technocrats run the show?
Jonathan Ferro.
With the Dallas Federal Reserve President.
And all the best sources.
You do wonder whether this administration can generate results. Professor Schiller, can it?
Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg. The world is listening.
If you're an experienced trader or investor looking to become an independent registered investment advisor, take the step to advisor independence at Interactive Brokers. Enjoy the freedom and flexibility to run your own business with no contract, minimal startup and overhead costs, registration and compliance support from our affiliate Greenwich Compliance, and our free CRM system to help you manage your entire customer lifecycle. IB provides trading, clearing, custody, reporting, and automated client billing for advisors of any size. Visit ibkr.com/advisors.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Aslinda Amin.
Let's put everything in perspective, bringing our guest who still favors the dollar versus the G10 currencies, Max Lin, Vice President and EM Asia Strategist at NatWest Markets. He joins us in the studio right now. So as we're talking about, central banks in focus, I just want to touch on first, go back to what Kuroda did yesterday. He made tweaks, but not enough to cause chaos, and it was a pretty good move.
Right. It was a good move because I think the BOJ's basically mastered, at least for this particular meeting, its messaging. So ahead of the meeting, people were always interpreting as any policy adjustment as potential BOJ tightening. He wanted to offset that expectation, so they added forward guidance. So the way I characterize it is a spoonful of forward guidance helps the tightening go down, at least in Japan. So the market looks like it's still digesting some of it today. We know that JGB yields are a tad higher, because overall the tweaks do still point to some slight tightness, but the fact that forward guidance was not expected by anybody, that was the initial reaction yesterday for JGBs and dollar yen.
Now, of course, Kuroda sent a dovish signal, but in the longer term, it could turn hawkish.
That is true because now you have more upside in the JGB yield overall. If the BOJ is going to step back and let it go up to even 20 basis points without interfering too strongly, then you're right, the yield could go switch higher.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Global news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, 617 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Daybreak out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. The White House may raise its planned tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese imports. They were set to be hit with tariffs of 10%. Now sources tell Bloomberg they could receive levies of 25%. Shares of Apple are higher after solid third-quarter results suggested the latest devices are resonating with consumers. Bloomberg Intelligence says that bodes well for the iPhone refresh in September. The Fed is coasting toward a probable rate hike next month, so today's meeting is unlikely to surprise. The statement will be scoured for comments on the sustainability of economic growth, the potential fallout from trade wars, and the slope of the yield curve. And the New York Post says Dan Loeb is trying to convince Campbell Soup's controlling family to put it up for sale. Loeb's Third Point reportedly has a stake of at least $300 million in the company. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen?
All right, Hannah, thank you. S&P futures are down 2 points this morning. Dow futures down 37. NASDAQ futures up 15. The 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds, yield 2.97%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 1% or 67 cents to $68.10 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Vice President Mike Pence is flying to Hawaii today to receive 55 sets of remains of U.S. soldiers who died in the Korean War. The remains were recently handed over by North Korea. The second day of the trial against former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort begins today. Federal prosecutors say Manafort funneled tens of millions of dollars through offshore accounts. Defense lawyers say it was Manafort's ex-right-hand man, Rick Gates, who embezzled millions of dollars. In sports and baseball, the Yankees beat the Orioles 6-3. We've seen the Mets lose plenty of games, but this one was special. The Mets lost to the Nationals 25-4. The turning point was the first pitch. The Red Sox lost. The A's and Giants were winners. Global News, yeah, I'm mad and snarky. 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Yeah, they got those four. Thank you, Michael. 6:20 is the time out on Wall Street. Let's bring in Carl Riccadonna, chief U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, talking about numbers. Carl, not expecting much movement on the numbers in terms of where the Federal Open Market Committee is going to set interest rates after 2 p.m. Wall Street time, are we?
Sure, Nathan. Talk about the August doldrums here with the Fed meeting. A pretty light lift today. So we have no press conference, no forecast update. We'll just have the tone of the meeting statement to really glean any signaling from the Fed. And, of course, we won't have any rate increase either. The market's already, significantly pricing in the likelihood of a September rate hike, over 80% right now. So even then, the Fed does not have to do much in terms of laying out the carpet for their upcoming actions. So they'll acknowledge the Q4, the Q2 GDP results, which were quite robust. But I think they'll also hint that that is not going to be a sustainable pace, and they'll retain their optionality for that potential fourth hike in Q4 of this year.
Yeah, the dot plot does show the potential for 4 rate hikes. Is your team still calling for 3?
We are still looking for just 3 rate hikes, and certainly the economy will be humming along nicely as we head towards that Q4 meeting. What I'm more concerned about are financial conditions tightening, and that could be a sell-off in the equity markets. It could be appreciation of the dollar, further flattening of the yield curve. All of these financial signals, more so than the economic signals, give me some pause that maybe the Fed won't feel the need to execute that fourth rate hike. And certainly, even if we look at the inflation numbers, we've underperformed for the better part of the last 8 years. We seem to be at 2% in the latest data, although I think the Fed will continue to use this language saying that we're close but not quite there in today's statement. And when we look at short-term changes, the inflation numbers are starting to show some evidence of moderation. So there's just really little need to take the punch bowl away that quickly. And I think ultimately when it comes down to it in Q4, they'll opt for a pause, not a hike. And mind you, that pause simply pushes that next hike out into Q1 of next year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how much signaling we should look for heading into the first half of 19.
I don't think we get anything in that regard today. It'll be more effective to do that at the September meeting when they release the next round of forecast updates and interest rate projections. For the time being, again, play it quiet, don't rock the boat, and see you in September, as the old song goes.
Yeah, indeed. In terms of boat rocking, are you expecting much of that when the Friday jobs report comes out?
I think that we could get some boat rocking there. The economy has been accelerating. Aside from that blowout Q2 GDP result, if we look at the underlying trend, the economy is indeed picking up a momentum, and that's happening in a low labor cost environment, as we saw yesterday in the employment cost index and also the core PCE deflator data for June. So if you have a lack of wage pressures and the economy is growing faster, that should augur for a stronger payroll gain. And so consensus is looking about 185, 190 for payrolls. We're looking for something north of 200,000. I think we're going to see a strong result. Still very gradual labor cost increases, but nonetheless, that payroll gain will get folks' attention.
Are we at, or how close are we, do you think, to the neutral rate?
I think we're pretty close to a neutral unemployment rate, but we'll know when we see more wage pressure. So assuming we see this gradual uptrend extend into the back half of the year, then probably we'll say in this cycle the neutral level of unemployment was about 4%, which was much lower